Right then, so we are 11 games into the League 2 season. A lot has happened, and it's time to sit down and digest and rank every Cheltenham player's start to the season. It's going to be brutal because, wow, we've been shit. But I am joined by a very high-profile guest. He's been on the channel before. He made a few little cameos on Saturday's vlog. It is the man himself, Mr. JoshTalksEFL. How are we doing, mate?
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's good to have you on, mate. The knowledge has arrived. The brains of Cheltenham has returned to the channel. It's about time. If you want to see more of Josh, comment down below, drop us a like, and send him a message harassing him to come on more. Be massively appreciated. But we've got a lot of players to get through. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be depressing. But it's content, and it's got to be done. If you do go on to enjoy, please do smash like and subscribe. We are approaching 3,000, so it'd mean the absolute world if you could help me hit that. But without further ado, let's get into the rankings. Right then, so as you can see, we do have 5 categories going from 5 stars to 1 star. Spoiler, I don't think there's any 5 stars. And me and Josh are going to have a quick discussion on each player and decide where we think they should go. There's probably going to be a few arguments because I'm often trying to be Mr. Positive. And, wow, he's not. So, no messing about. Let's get straight into it. Owen Evans. Now, I've got a bit to say on Owen Evans, so I'll let Josh start.
Yeah, Owen Evans, you know what? I wasn't too bothered when we re-signed him. I know in League 1 he was quite poor and he had a lot of mistakes in him, but when we signed him in League 2, I thought he was really good in that loan spell where we had him. And then this season, I'm going to be honest, Matt. I think he's been one of our best players.
I agree.
I think genuinely he's commanded his box really well. I think for some of the goals potentially he could have done a bit better, but he's also made some unbelievable saves. The likes of, I think about the Camwa shot in the early stages of the Newport game where he pulled off a top draw save. He pulled off a top draw save against Harrogate in the late stage before Bradbury scored. Against Accrington recently at home, he pulled off 2 phenomenal saves from 2 headers. So I think that he has gone under the radar a little bit, and because of what he's done in his past at Cheltenham, a lot of fans will just write him off and slag him off straight away, essentially. But for me, I think he's been one of our better performers. I think he's been, despite the amount of goals we've conceded, I think he, like you say, has been one of our best players. He's been very solid, pulled off some really good saves. I think the Swindon game didn't help his cause. I think that really, put a dent in what he's established himself to be in his second spell here, or third spell even, should I say. It was a really poor performance, and we could talk about that game for hours, but we won't. What are we thinking ranking-wise, Josh? I think for me, it's going to be... I think I'm going to put him 4 stars, mate.
I agree. I completely agree. That was where I was thinking. I think the Swindon game, like I say, is fresh in the mind, and it maybe some people might think, maybe put him a bit below, but he's been very solid so far, and hopefully going into Colchester he can be just as good. I don't think there's much to say on Joe Day. I think when he has played in the cup competitions, he's actually been pretty good, but just because of the lack of games, should we just put him in the middle tier?
I'd put him 2 stars, to be fair, mate.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's fair. He's only played 1 game against Newport, so.
Okay.
I didn't watch the game, so I can't really comment on him.
Okay, now we'll go for that. I just thought it's hard to judge someone on a lack of games. There's a lot of players that are missing from this list purely because they haven't played enough games. Joe there, I thought we'll put in just because he's another goalkeeper, and I thought he was really good against Plymouth, actually, despite the fact that we conceded 3. I thought he made some really good saves in that game, but yeah, it's completely fair enough. Now I've got an interesting one. Of course, he's injured at the moment, hopefully back within the next month or so. We'll soon see. Mr. Arkell Jude Boyd, AJB. What are we saying, Josh?
What a top bloke he is. It's a difficult one because in pre-season he looked phenomenal, and then obviously in the Northampton game the week before the season started, he picked up that little knock which put him out of the Newport game, and then he kind of re-established himself, went on international duty, and then picked up another injury a week of coming back. So really we haven't seen much from AJB. What we have seen, I think, is really positive, and if it was any other club in the division, he'd probably be a moneymaker, but no one else will probably let him go for about 30 grand at the end of the season. Just on the basis that we haven't seen too much of him, I don't think I could rate him in 4 or 5. So I would say for me, he'd go in the middle. Yeah,
I think I agree. When I was making this tier list, before we started recording. I kind of thought, I wish I put what have I done? I wish I put a tier in between 3 stars and 4 stars, because that's kind of where he's floating around. We haven't seen enough of him, but what we have seen has been incredible. But I think, again, the injury came at a horrible time for him. Given a few more games, few more minutes so far, and he would definitely be in that 4 stars if he carried on that form. But, hopefully, we wish him the best. Hopefully his recovery goes well, and be good to see him back in the team as soon as possible. To a player who maybe was a bit underwhelming, Mr. Ryan Haynes. Josh.
Yeah, I think against Newport Grimsby, and I know we conceded 5 goals in those 2 games, but I thought he was one of the better players in both of those games.
Yeah.
And then moving on, it just wasn't great at all. And the game he got injured in at Salford, it was genuinely one of the worst performances I've seen from an individual in a Cheltenham shirt for a very long time. I understand that he's been injured a lot throughout the past 2 seasons, so maybe it's a lack of match fitness, a lack of match sharpness, and then obviously injury prone as well. For me, I think at the time the signing made sense, because obviously he's got out of the league with Northampton. He's been up there with Newport before, so it looked like a good sign on paper. But the fact that he has been out injured for so long and these ongoing niggles, I don't think it's a great signing. I don't think he's a great player, and I'd be looking at probably 2 stars.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that the Salford game is what has always stood out to me. I think ever since those first 2 games where he did look solid, like you say, and so did a lot of the players in the team. I think he's been one of those characters who has almost lost confidence over time, become a lot more shaky on the ball, not sure of themselves, when they're on the ball and when they're defending. So yeah, I can't disagree with that. We're actually on the same page so far, Josh. So
I like it.
We'll see what happens. Ibrahim Bakare. Now, my thoughts on this guy. I'll start this time. Now, this lad plays with passion. He plays for the badge on the front, not the name on the back. He honestly dies for the cause. He is, however, Mr. Inconsistent. I think he can be very reckless. I think, first game of the season against Newport, he was solid. The games that followed, he was decent, and then there was the old performance where it just dropped a bit of a stinker. There's multiple occasions at the moment. It seems like 1 game on, 1 game off. However, he has been another player that, shock horror, has been injured, another defensive injury. So he is back in contention for Colchester, we're told, by Mr. JP, who Josh is best mates with these days. I mean, I think it's hard to rank someone who is so inconsistent and has been injured. I've got an idea of where I want to put him, but Josh, what are we thinking?
I think when I think of Bakare, he's an absolute monster defensively. I think he's great defensively. However, I don't think he's very good at football. Like in terms of actual defending, I think he's brilliant. I think he's very, very good. But if he has to do anything which doesn't involve defending, whether that's on the ball, dribbling out, making passes, it's vile. Like, I don't want to watch it.
No.
But
the only time we saw a bit of moving out with the ball was Chesterfield, wasn't it? And then ever since then he's been injured. So
but he's a difficult. I feel like in terms of our defence, he offers something a little bit different though, because obviously like with Bradbury and Stubbs, they're very stiff, they're very slow. Bennett as well, very slow. So Bakare injects a little bit of pace, and like you say, he does play for pride and with a passion. For me, I quite like him, so I would put him probably in the middle with AJB from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking. But you know what? I said there'd be arguments. We're on a roll here. It's getting a bit boring now. We're 5 players in, and now we've got. This could be the worst one yet. I'm going to let Josh start because, again, there's a lot to say on this man. Mr. Scott Bennett, lots of experience, lots of EFL football under his belt. Has it been proven so far, Josh? The legs are tiring, but mentally, is it still there?
I think Scott Bennett came to the club and a lot of people were excited because obviously he's been in this league for a while. He was obviously Newport's captain for a good few years. Great relationship with Michael Flynn, as we've apparently found out. Maybe an undroppable relationship. But no, like he's somebody who obviously was a midfielder, and now that he's got older, his legs are tired, so he's playing centre back. Now, prior to me going on holiday, which was the Warsaw game, I thought Scott Bennett was actually our best player this season. I thought first 3 games I saw of him, Wimbledon, Newport and Grimsby, I thought he was a standout player. I thought he looked really strong. I thought he looked really comfortable, and I thought he looked really composed. Since I come back from holiday, and he's been trialled in midfield, and obviously played at the back again. He's also been injured. He has been an absolute calamity, a car crash, and single-handedly been at fault for about 3 or 4 goals. And when you're the captain and you're making those sorts of mistakes, I know you can't help mistakes, but when you're making them so frequently and you're supposed to lead by example, it just really isn't a very good look at all.
And when it's an experienced head in the team, a character that the younger lads should be looking up to, someone who should be composed. They've got the experience to back, winning the mental battle in games and not making so many errors and whatever. It really is bad news when you see players like that making, 4 or 5 mistakes across 3 games that are leading to goals, which then ultimately lead to losses. It's really worrying. And is it just his legs slowing down? Is it, he's not, the football's left him up in his head? Who knows? Maybe he's just having a funny few games. Again, we're not. We can say all we want on these videos, but we're not the backroom staff. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on inside these players' heads. Where are we putting him, Josh?
Just on the basis of those first 3 games, I'd be generous and give him a 2, but he was very close to a 1 for me.
Yeah. I think I was floating between both. We'll say 2. I think the first few games warrant a rating of 2, but since then he's dangerously close to a 1 now, isn't he, unfortunately? And it's a shame because he did come in with so much experience, so much weight of expectation, and he just hasn't lived up to it, unfortunately. And it's sad to see a player coming towards the back end of their career and then just drop off, and I hope that he can bounce back. Moving on to someone who's just starting their career early, of course, a loanee, the first loanee that we've ranked so far. We have got Levi Lang. Josh,
he's absolute dog shit. He's meant to be a defender, but can't defend, can't actually kick a ball properly, just shanks everything. Don't really have too much to say on him. I mean, the squad is poor and he can't get into the starting 11.
I was going to say, I think this is the first 1 star. I think I've made my thoughts on Levi Lang known on the Robbins Report podcast and on Twitter. Insert the clip of his absolute horror show at Grimsby away. He's a young lad, and the whole point of loanees from Premier League clubs is for them to come in and develop, and they're not going to be great when they first start. There's very few occasions where a player comes in and hits the ground running straight away. We've been very fortunate that in the last 3-4 years we've had centre backs that have come in from Championship or Premier League clubs and have been immense from the get-go. Unfortunately, Levi Lang is absolutely miles off that level, but also miles off the starting 11 level at the moment, which, like Josh says, it's a really poor squad. And at the moment, do I see him progressing? No, I wish him the best, and I do hope he does progress. I'll never wish the worst to a player, but at the moment, it's nothing other than a 1 star, unfortunately. This is a big discussion to be had. I think I spent about half an hour on my match review for the game against Swindon talking about this man, Mr. Sam Stubbs, another loanee, of course. Loanee from a fellow League 2 club in Bradford, who we do play on Tuesday. Josh, what's your thoughts on him, mate?
Sam Stubbs is somebody who I was aware of before he signed for the club. At Exeter, when they got promoted, he was one of their standout players that campaign, and he went to Bradford, and a lot of Bradford fans liked him, and they were a little bit disappointed that he left the club. So when I saw that we signed him, I was like, sick. Go on, that's a great signing for the boys.
Proper signing at the time, wasn't it? Yeah.
Now, what I've seen of him since I've been back from holiday, I can't speak on his first few games. I think he played at Warsaw and Harrogate.
Warsaw and Harrogate.
So I didn't watch either of those games. What I have seen of him is he can't pass a football. He can't communicate with his back line. And he has the first touch of a literal child. I mean, he's all right at winning headers and clearing the ball, but for somebody who was meant to come in and be, this centre back with experience of going up from the league, and other fans being disappointed that he's left them. He's been shambolic. I've heard fans say he doesn't work in a back three, which we play, but even when we played back four, he hasn't looked any better in that.
Doesn't change it, does it?
No, like he genuinely, like if I saw him rocking up on a Saturday to play park football, I'd think, yeah, he looks all right. But playing League Two professional football, absolutely not.
It's not good enough, is it? It's not good enough. I think I do just want to briefly talk about, before we move on, I do just want to briefly talk about those two games that you did miss, Walsall and Harrogate. Walsall, I think, was a pretty poor performance all round, but I think one of the better players in the team, one of the better performers was Sam Stubbs. And then Harrogate at home, obviously there was two standout performers in that game, and that was Bradbury and Stubbs. And I thought Stubbs was excellent across the 90 minutes. I think Bradbury had a really good second half and looked solid in the first half. I think Sam Stubbs the whole game was really, really good. Looked really reliable, seemed confident playing out from the back. His first touch was actually alright for a change. I think I was one of his biggest fans after that Harrogate game, and how quickly things can change. He has been hopeless in recent weeks, and I make the point when I speak to Bradford fans about him that he did start well, and he is currently playing in a team that is low on confidence. He's playing in a back line that is on terrible form. We're conceding a lot of goals, we're making silly mistakes, this, that and the other, but unfortunately he's at the heart of those mistakes a lot of the time. You just take that almost worst own goal I've ever seen in my life. I'll insert the clip, I'll overlay it now. That was, admittedly, that was three players' fault, not just his, but why is he even going to the ball in the first place when Owen Evans is, calling for it and coming out for it? I will never know. Not only the fact that he's then tried to clear it and booted it straight into a player that's 2 yards away from him. It's shocking. And it's hard to put a finger on a rating, isn't it, Josh? But we've got to do it.
For me, because I didn't see those first two games, he's a 1-star for me. But I'll let you rate him because you've seen more of him than I have.
Now, the amount I've talked about him over the last week, I think it should be a 1-star. But I was really impressed from those first two games. I can't believe how it's possible to drop off so much. And again, it's another one of those where I kind of wish there was a 1.5 stars. I'm gonna put him in 2 stars. I'm gonna put him in 2 just because he was a standout player against Harrogate. He was a very strong player against Walsall, and there is a player there. You don't drop off that quickly and not come back from it. He will bounce back, I'm sure, but it's hard to put him in 2 stars. I'll be honest. Now, I'm not going to talk too much on this man because I'll get accused of just being his biggest fan and banging the drum for him too much. So, Mr. Timmy B, Josh, take it away.
Do you know what, mate? He's a great lad. I met him in the Rum Bar a few weeks ago, and I had a great conversation with him. So I'm on the Timmy B hype train as well. No, he was one of those players who was weirdly frozen out of the side by Flynn at the start of the season. I mean, I quite like Bradbury. I liked him last season. I liked him the season prior. I thought after he broke through with Wade, I thought the upcoming season, which was last season, I thought he probably would have played every game. That wasn't to be the case. He only played about half the games. I'm not sure whether Darryl Clark really fancied him too much, but also obviously he was playing behind Lewis Freestone, and that's a different story. I mean, they're two different players. But this season, I thought Bradbury, if we keep hold of him, he's going to be a huge asset for us. Now, I went on holiday under the understanding that JP said that he was moving, so I was a little bit gutted. And then I found out a few days later when I got internet that he was still at the club. And I was like, oh, amazing. Then I find out a few days later that he's starting against Harrogate. And I'm like, okay, this is a weird turn of events. Obviously scored against Harrogate, and then since then been a staple in our team. I think for League Two, I think he's probably the perfect centre back you can get in the league. He's tall, he's athletic. I personally think he's good on the ball. He's good in duels, and I think since he's broken into the side, and it's needed as well with his experience from playing levels above now, I think he's probably been if not our standout performer, one of the top standout performers. So I'd put him 4 stars.
Yeah. Again, I think everyone knows my thoughts on him. I think he's quality. I think what's really commendable is that, you know, he's broken into the squad once more after being transfer listed, after being frozen out of the squad, and he hasn't had an easy route to this point. You know, he's been frozen out of squads under 3 managers now. You know, and he's got a breakthrough, and when he does get that breakthrough chance, he proves that he's good enough to play. He's done it under all 3 managers that he has played under, and I couldn't be happier for him, and I completely agree. 4 stars. Our best defender by a mile. Going on to one that maybe hasn't been so good. Shipley, what was that?
How do you go from Will Ferry, somebody who's so athletic, so dynamic, so good at going forward, but also good defensively, to the stiffest man in world football? Like, it genuinely looks like it's a chore for him to jog, let alone like sprint. Defensively, I don't actually think he's too bad. I think in a tackle, I think he's quite strong. But in terms of his actual defensive awareness and other things like that, I don't think he's great. And then on the football, he's absolutely dreadful.
He's not been he's not been our worst defender by no stretch of the imagination, but he hasn't really shown anything that is convincing that he's going to be, you know, one of our standout performers and a strong asset to the squad in the coming weeks. You know, the second that Haynes comes back, which isn't going to be for a while, you know, by then we might be absolutely on our knees for him to come back, which does say quite a bit about where he's at. What are you giving him?
I'd give him a 2-star. I think one would be a little bit too harsh, but he's definitely nowhere near a 3. Yeah,
that's the thing. I think you've also got Haynes in the 2 stars, and I think, you know, maybe then you think, you know, you compare the two and you think Shipley has been worse than Haynes, but he hasn't been that much worse to go in 1 star. I think to put him in the bottom tier with someone who has been so unconvincing so far, and so off the pace, it would be completely unfair. So I think we've probably given him a fair ranking there. So next one, Lewis Payne. What was that?
Lewis Payne, for me, is really frustrating because obviously he's a wing back. He played wing back last season for Newport, and he was very good for them, got a lot of assists. Now, I think he's got 2 assists already this season, but he's just really frustrating because defensively, he's not very good at all, and he's being asked to defend. And then going forward, I know I just said that he's got 2 assists, but I think he's quite wasteful when he goes forward. A lot of the time, it's his decision making, which is a little bit wrong, whether he's taking on a man or when he's hitting a cross or taking on a shot. So for me, I think that there's definitely potential there, but at the moment he's fallen a little bit short.
I think he's had a lot of injuries. I mean, his legs are literally made of glass, which is a bit worrying. I think when he first came in, he was a bit underwhelming from the expectation that I had of him. I think against Swindon he had a solid second half. You know, I think there's definitely more to come from him. I just think we need to see more, in my opinion, but maybe because of the injuries you're going to put him lower. I don't know. Is that unfair? It's hard not to put him in 2.
Yeah, no, I agree. 2, definitely 2.
Perfect. We've agreed on another one. There we go. We're cooking. And now we're on to the midfielders. God, we've got a lot of defenders. Mr. Tom Pett. Now, this is a player who, you know, is on his day League One level. Hasn't featured maybe as much as you'd want him to so far this season, I must say. Obviously there's a lot of competition in the middle of the park. It's tough for me to think of a rating already, because I think, again, he should be in the team more, and, you know, when he has played he's been a bit inconsistent. Josh, from what you've seen, what are you thinking?
I think that last season him and Will Ferry were my player of the seasons, and when I found out we were keeping him this campaign, I was absolutely delighted because, like you said, on his day, he's definitely League One quality.
It was keeping him was like a new signing, wasn't it? It felt
Yeah.
like it almost, because at League Two level, it's such an advantage to have a player like
However,
that.
what's become apparent with him is it seems he hasn't come out and publicly said it, but you kind of get the gist. But he doesn't want to be at the club, and that's fair enough. I mean, he came to the club because of Darryl Clark, and Clark isn't here anymore. He doesn't really have anything to be here for. Obviously, his partner lives in Manchester, so it's a long commute. What I will say is when he has played, again, he's looked disinterested. I do understand that he's obviously played maybe a more attacking role when I think he's better suited as a deep line playmaker, picking up the ball off the defenders and making it tick from there. But from what we're used to what he's given, and I also appreciate he's playing with worse players this time around. I think he's been one of our worst performers this season. I've got no problems with saying that. I genuinely think when I watch him, I don't think, apart from maybe Accrington, and that was the last 20 minutes, I don't think he's given a single 6 out of 10 performance. I think he's been extremely poor. I think his passing's been poor. I think a lot of the time he's rash into challenges where he'll just go flying in for no apparent reason. And on that basis, Matt, you're probably going to disagree with me, but I think he's 1 star, especially for what we know we could be getting out of him. We're not getting it at all. And I've been very public with that as well. I put that out on my own Twitter.
You know what? I must admit, I did not think that rating was going to be that bad. He's definitely gone below expectations this season for sure. And I think the whole thing about him being disinterested, I don't know. It's hard to say. Again, we're not inside these players' heads. It's very tough to know. But it's, location-wise, it's not ideal. And he is getting a bit older, and it's probably not the most ideal thing for him. So from that point of view, I understand it. I think. I must admit, I don't think he's been extremely poor. I think that's very harsh. I think he's been below par. His tackling in the midfield has let him down a lot. I can completely get on board with that. His passing hasn't been what it can be, but I think his play out to the wings, when we have been going forward, has been solid. What you want to see from him. On the pitch, do I think he looks entirely disinterested? I think I've got to disagree there. I just can't put him in 1 star. I really can't. I think because of how good we know it, how good we know he is or can be, I think it almost feels harsh putting him in 2. But we're judging it on performances so far this season, and for me, it has to be 2. Are you alright with that, Josh, or are you going to overrule me?
It's your channel, mate, so I'll let you have him in 2.
No, you're the guest. You can overrule if you can convince me.
I just think, considering what he's been from last season to this season, I couldn't, apart from that Accrington 20 minutes back, I couldn't tell you a time this season where I think he's looked good. I genuinely don't think he's looked good in a game, not even an entire 90 minutes for that.
I'm gonna put him in 2. I think you're being a bit harsh. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's had a great 90 minutes or a good 90 minutes, and I don't think he's been a standout by any stretch. But I just don't think he's been quite as bad as you're saying he's been. I'd like to think that I do watch enough of the games to see what he's done. And again, maybe he hasn't played enough and not been in the squad enough to really prove himself and get a bit of consistency. But that's the first interesting one we've had so far. Moving on.
The next was going to be
Luke Young.
Big opinions on him.
You do have big opinions on Luke Young. I've seen a few tweets from your page about Mr. Luke Young. So we'll let you kick off.
Yeah, Luke Young for me would potentially be. I'm not going to, but I could argue that he could be a potential 5-star player. I am a huge fan of Luke Young. I think the first 2 games, Grimsby, I don't think he was great. I think he was okay against Grimsby. I know he scored, but I thought that was his first game back apart from Plymouth where, he was actually playing some competitive football and he looked a little bit shaky. His passes were a little bit overhit. I remember saying to Fraser, I was like, oh my God, he's absolutely cannon the ball at him from like 10 yards away. And then Wimbledon, I think everybody was poor that game. But since then, I think Luke Young has been really good. I think his passing range has come on heaps and bounds. He's probably the only player I could say in this team can actually keep the ball and is calm and composed enough to actually slow down the play, and if we want to go that sort of way, he can just calm it down. I think set pieces, I think his delivery is phenomenal. Striking the ball, I think, is great, and then defensively, for a short man, he wins a lot of headers and he puts himself about. He isn't afraid to get stuck in, and he's an experienced man. Obviously, was captain of Wrexham, who are now in League One, and I think personally, and I was saying this to somebody at uni today, I think he's a League One footballer, and I think he's probably in this team too good for us. So for me, that's my opinions on him. And I know that sounds crazy after I just slandered Tom Petty, who I've also said, can play League One football. But I think the way Luke Young's conducted himself on the pitch compared to Tom Petty kind of is the reason why I'm so impressed with him.
Yeah. No, I think that's completely fair. I do think he's come on leaps and bounds since the start. I think initially he was another one of those players that has a lot of experience, is a leader, and he didn't quite look 100% there to start off with. But like we say, since then, he has really come on and proven that he's a solid figure in this team. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm exactly... I don't think I'm quite as big a fan as you, I must say. You've got like a Timmy B-esque love affair going on with Youngie, let's call him. I honestly, from what I've seen of him, I actually wouldn't be entirely against putting him in 5 stars, but I just think in a team like this, you've got to really impress to be in that 5-star category. And I'm going to leave it up to you and be, do whatever your heart tells you to do, because this is your man, and I wouldn't disagree with either of the categories that you could put him in.
I've got 1 or 2 other players I think could be pushing that, so I'm gonna leave him in 4 just for now. But subject to change by the end of the video. Subject to change. Yeah,
just to clarify, at the end we will go back through our categories, and if we want to do any last minute changes of heart, then of course we will do, and I have no doubt that Josh will end up moving this guy, so I may as well already put him there now. We'll put him where he's told us to. He's the guest, alright? Right then, moving on to someone who was transfer listed, another player who was transfer listed, and now I think has proven themselves to be absolutely unreal. Liam Kinsella. Now, you said there was 1 or 2 other players that could be pushing 5 stars, Josh. Is this one?
Kinsella isn't one, but
really? Okay.
But for me, with Kinsella, against Newport opening day of the season when he played in that holding midfield role, I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he worked really, really hard, and then for some reason, Michael Flynn decided, no, not for me, transfer listed him, and he was frozen out until Chesterfield, where he came on off the bench and played right wing back for the last 10 minutes or so. And then the game after that, I can't remember who he played, but I don't believe he started, and then he made a start against Accrington, where for me, the Accrington game, he was the man of the match. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, got the assist for the Ryan Bowman goal.
That ball in was unbelievable. Let's just give props to that. That was an incredible cross.
And then on Saturday, when he got moved into midfield, again, I thought he was really good. So he hasn't played too much this season. We know what Kins is about. He was with us last year. He played a plethora of positions: left wing back, right wing back, centre mid. He's a tidy footballer. He's a hard worker. He goes about his business quietly, and I think 4 stars would be more than fair.
Don't disagree at all. I just want to say one thing that really impressed me about Kinsella is his versatility. I think this season, I think it has been proven enough times since he's been with us that he is a midfield player. I think he can slot in at wing back if you've got any injuries, but he is most certainly a central midfielder or a holding midfielder. And this season he's had to go back out onto that right side at times. And when he has, don't get me wrong, defensively he could be better, but I think he's defended better than Payne has. And going forward, he's been excellent. So yeah, 4 stars, I agree. And maybe another one who could be moved up come the end of the video, but we'll see. On to another young'un, a loanee. Now, there's a lot of things to be said about this lad, Mr. Joel Colwell. Started, that Newport game, he sold us a dream with that a bit, I think. Since then, we haven't really seen a lot of him. What's your thoughts?
My thoughts on Joel Colwell is he's far too good for our team. He is the standout for me, and he's somebody who I would make a mark for going 5 stars. I just think that his ball carrying ability is absolutely fantastic. I think his passing range is great, finishing's great, and I feel like at the start of the season we were a lot more positive, so he looked a lot better recently.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've been very, very poor, and he struggled to get involved.
I was going to say, do you think maybe the reason for a lot of people thinking that we haven't seen a lot of him recently, do you think is simply because he's a diamond in the rough and he's being held back by the fact that we are crap?
Well, you think about Grimsby, Newport, those 2 games where he was phenomenal. We didn't play hoofball those games. We actually knocked the ball around. And then in recent weeks, I mean, I think Salford we didn't really knock the ball long. I thought he was really good that day as well. He had a couple of really nice touches, played a phenomenal ball into Archer in the first half where he couldn't convert. And I think it was him who laid off Jude Boyd as well. And then he was also part of the lead up for the Archer goal that day. So I think he's being bypassed far too much. For a player of his quality, you need to give him the ball to the feet and let him work his magic, because we've seen what he can do. So I mean, for me, he's 5 stars. He's a luxury player, and I don't think he's going to be here come January, because I think he's going to be recalled. He's definitely going to be recalled, and whether he actually gets minutes for Cardiff or goes out to League One, I'm not too sure. But for me, he's somebody who's far too good to be playing for us, and if we're not going to play to his strengths, then I mean, he may as well move to a different club and develop the way which I'm sure he will.
But the only thing I'd say is that 5 stars a ranking based upon his ability and how good of a player he is, or how he's played this season? That's the only thing I'd say, and the only reason I'm like thinking deeply is because it's based upon what we've seen this season so far. Have we seen enough this season so far? Whether it's a fault of his own or not, have we seen enough for him to be 5 stars?
I think in the league he's got like 6 goal contributions, and I mean in games, like I said, he's had very bright moments, and it's not entirely his fault that he's not getting on the ball for 90 minutes consistently.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, Matt, I'm gonna have to put him 5 stars, mate.
Yeah, I think in recent weeks it's kind of put a bit of a dampener on how good he is, because I mean, maybe he hasn't had enough touches or whatever, but I can get along with that. I think what I will say is, I think if you've got Colwell up there, I think there's definitely a few others who will be added come the end of the video. But that's just my opinion. Now, on to a player who has actually really impressed me, Ethan Archer. Now, obviously came in from the lower leagues. 2 years ago was practically Sunday League level at this point. Came in was relatively unknown, a massive lack of experience. Comes in at the start, he puts in a couple solid performances, but still looks a bit unsure of himself. And I think ever since that goal away at Salford, he's really grown into first team football. And I think he had a fairly solid game against Swindon. Actually, I thought he was one of our better players, despite the fact that half the time the midfield was bypassed. But when he did get on the ball, he looked like one of the only players that was actually going to make something happen. For me, I mean, I don't think it's quite 5 stars, but he's definitely getting towards that way. What do you think of him, Josh?
Yeah, post Salford, I think he's been the best player in the squad. I remember the start of the season, I clowned on him a little bit because I thought he was too lightweight. He was just getting bossed about a little bit too easily. But I look back at that Plymouth game where he played against Championship opposition, and I thought he was really good that game in the EFL Cup. And then, like you say, in recent weeks, now that he's become a starter, I also believe he's an attacking midfielder or something. He's playing out wide. But no, like in duels, he looks really confident. He's really skillful, really talented, creates things. I think he's got like 4 goal contributions now. Chesterfield, I thought he was arguably our best player that day. And yeah, no, I think he's a really solid player. For me, he would be pushing 5 stars, but it's just the fact that he's only just recently broken into the team. Believe it or not, I think JP said he's the only player who's featured in every league game.
Yeah, he has, yeah.
So for me, he's 4 stars, could be pushing 5.
Yeah, again, it's another one of those where you wish there was a category in between, really. But no if buts and maybes. Here's where he is. Could definitely be higher. Maybe we're being harsh. Of course, let us know your thoughts on all the rankings, by the way, as we're going through them. Drop a comment. Let us know your thoughts. It's always good to hear different points of view. Right then, we're almost through the midfielders now. Well, some might say this guy isn't a midfielder because of the positions he's played in the past for other teams. He's been playing on the wing, but he really, he's an attacking midfielder or a winger. Harrison Sona. It's a really interesting one for me. Josh?
I thought Harrison Sona in pre-season, I thought he looked really, really good. And then I thought he looked really good against Newport as well. He's somebody who has obviously played a lot of academy football with Villa and Sunderland. A little bit lightweight for men's football at times. I feel like he breezes through games and he still treats it like academy football, where he's got all the time in the world, and that's not the case with men's professional football. There's a lot on the line, and I feel like that might be the reason why Flynn has his opinions on him and why he's been dropped and potentially made the scapegoat, you could say. Do I think that him being almost frozen out of teams a little bit harsh? I do, because I think technically on the ball, what he can do with the ball, he's one of the better players in the team. But in terms of what he does off the ball, I think lets him down massively. That being said, I know he came on for about 10 minutes against Swindon. I thought it was a really bright cameo, which he had at left wing back, which is quite interesting to see moving forward. But obviously,
I was going to mention the Swindon game. I thought, in an abnormal position by his standards, I thought he actually did really well. So yeah, that's definitely something worth noting. Sorry, carry on.
That's all right. No, I was just going to say that I quite like him personally, just because of his technical ability. But like I said, he lets himself down a little bit with his off the ball work. Haven't really seen enough of him to really give him too much of a fair rating. So I'm just going to say 2 on the basis that we haven't really seen much.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he has had the odd game where he's impressed. I think it's hard. It's hard to put him there purely based upon the fact that he's got that Salford incident, let's say, where he was subbed on and then 20 minutes later hooked by Flynn, which, to be honest, wasn't, don't get me wrong, he wasn't playing well, but it wasn't really a fault of his own. He was subbed into a game that, when he's experienced not enough league football aside from academy football, he's been subbed onto the wrong game at the wrong time. Like you say, he tries to breeze through games at times. At that point, it was getting towards, the crunch stage of that game. I think he came on when we were still 1-0 up. It was going to get physical, and then you sub on a player like Harrison Sona. I think, ever since then he's been seen as, like you say, the scapegoat, and it's you do feel a bit bad for him, but I think 2 is fair, just again because we haven't seen enough of him. Now, I would like to fill up this middle slot a bit more. It's getting a bit lonely. I was thinking this would be more of like the average tier, but it's quickly it just shows that the average is quite
middle ground though. They've either been good or they've been shit.
Yeah, I was going to say it shows that the average is piss poor. Jordan Thomas. Now I'm going to let Josh take it away with this because I feel like you've got a lot to say on this type of player always, so I'll let you take the floor.
Jordan Thomas, I think, is a really, really exciting player. I think he's very raw. That being said, he's not necessarily that young anymore. I think he's pushing 24 now. Obviously, he came up through non-league. We signed him in League One, and last season, a lot of people were screaming out for him to start games more because what we saw was really exciting. And when I mentioned that he's raw, he just wants to run at people and drive at people, and he's positive. That being said, we're trying to play him at left wing back if he does play. He's not a defensive player whatsoever. He is an out and out winger. I've also seen people saying that he needs to play behind the striker. He's an out and out winger. If you're trying to play an out and out winger behind the striker, it's not going to work. I don't care how technical he is or how good he is at running at people. It's not his skill set. It's not the way he plays. And I think at this age, he's not probably going to develop into that player after the upbringing he's had as well. No. He would have done that earlier on in his career. So the way we set up last season, the way we set up this season, and also the fact that he's just been injured for most of the campaign. Yeah. I personally think I wouldn't like him to leave because I love him and I think he's good off the bench, but I don't see him making a mark in this team, and I don't see how he can get into the team with the way which we play. No, I agree. I just on the playing behind the striker's point, every time he still finds himself taking the ball out to the wing and trying to cut in. Mm-hmm.
whether he even realises it himself or not, because it's clearly just so ingrained in his style of play. He is an out-and-out winger, and I said it as soon as he came in, and the first few times we saw him, he is excellent as a winger already, and he could get better if he gets enough Football League minutes. He's a really, really good winger, but we don't play wingers. We don't play out-and-out wingers. That immediately puts him at less chance of getting starts, let alone minutes. So it's hard to say. Unless we transition away from wing backs, I don't see him making any stamp on this team whatsoever. And I think this season he's had a hard time with injury, like you say, but also when he has been, in the one or two occasions where he has been fit, it's impossible to work him into this team. The way that we've been playing on the back foot in recent weeks, he's another player that thrives off of free flow and attacking football. We don't play that. Colwell's in 5 stars says a lot about how good he is, because Thomas is a fantastic player, or can be a fantastic player, but because we don't play that free flow and attacking football, and because we can't get him into the team, or even when he is in the team, because we don't play the free flow and attacking football, you don't see enough of him, and that's not the fault of his own.
I think what's really frustrating is that when we opted to use wingers this season was when he was actually out injured, so it was the perfect time for him to come in and make that stamp. And then now that he's fit again, we've moved back to a 5-3-2, so that we're not using those wide players anymore. So I mean, it's no fault of his own. I was gonna put him in 2, but I don't think his performances have been bad. I just don't think he's really got a chance. So I'm going to put him in 3, to be honest, Matt.
I was going to say, I think you'd almost feel too harsh putting him in 2 alongside some of those. You look at some of the players in 2, and I think it's completely unfair to from what we've seen of him this season, to put him anywhere near that. So I completely agree. Now we're on to the strikers, and I think we'll probably get through these quite quickly, because we've basically had a different front 2 every week. Yeah. So Liam Dawson, another player that we haven't seen enough of, had a good debut against Newport. Since then, I mean, when he has played, you wouldn't really know it. I mean, he had a chance, was it Chesterfield away, after we equalised. Yeah. I think he did quite well under the circumstances of the pressure he got put under. And I think he's another player that, so far I'm not convinced by at all. But the more minutes he gets, I'm sure he'll develop into a solid striker. Is he going to get the minutes in the current state? No. I mean, unfortunately, we talk about players getting given more game time. We're 3 points above the relegation zone now. It's not a time for experimenting, unfortunately.
He desperately needs a loan move to National League North or South, because he's not a Football League player. No. And I think that's quite evident. I mean he's not exactly the skinniest of lads, but he doesn't really make himself, he doesn't put himself about. He isn't really a physical presence. He doesn't win many headers. He's all right off the ball. He does a lot of running, but I mean, if you mentioned him, you wouldn't really think of any of his notable performances. I know against Newport he scored, but it was a tap in, and obviously against Sheffield he had that big chance which he unfortunately missed. But I think of him, and I just think about Salford, where he came on, he was asked to play on the wing, and it's another player who we've signed, and for some reason we're playing in a different position to what we signed to. It's a bit strange. I wouldn't be too against putting him in 1. I know that might sound really horrible, but I just haven't really seen anything which makes me think he's gonna be a good player this season. I don't think he has been a good player this season either.
I agree with everything you said up until the 1. I
just don't know if I can put him in 2, Matt. That's all. I mean, he's played a fair few games, but he just hasn't touched the ball, and I don't know if that's his fault or if that's other people's fault, but he's just not involved, and I can't put somebody in 2 who runs around for 20-30 minutes
and doesn't have an impact on the game. Yeah. Oh, you've given me a good compelling argument there. I think maybe I'm being generous with 2. I just think he hasn't. He's barely played, and when he has played, when he's actually been played in his position, I think he has he has looked like he could make something happen. You know, obviously he hasn't on several occasions, but I think, you know, when he is played in that striker position that, you know, in which he was brought in as a striker, I just think, you know, maybe he hasn't quite looked 1-star standard. But you know what?
I'm just going to let you know before you put him into 1, okay? I know we scored a fair few goals this season, but I'm going to be quite harsh on the strikers. Just like a little pre-warning.
There's only one striker that's actually well, I think I'll give a half decent rating to, put it that way. Okay, we'll go 1. For the record, I think that's very unfair. But listen, the EFL expert will let him run with it. I mean, honestly, what to say about Matty Taylor?
Do you want me to say my piece?
I'll just say, ever since that whole thing about you know, offering fans out, supposedly according to Twitter, I don't know what to say anymore, because, you know, we haven't have we seen him at all since? I don't think we have. So yeah, go on, Josh.
1 star. He is for what he was last season to what he is this season. He has been terrible. He has been so bad. And again, I don't entirely think that's his fault. I think it's the way which we play as a team and what we're asking of him. But I mean, apart from the last, when he played against Grimsby, the last 10 minutes of that game, I think he's been really, really poor this season. I think his attitude's been really poor as well. And whether he is really injured or whether that's an internal issue, that's something entirely different. But me personally, with the age he's at, and whether he has been injured or whether there is an ongoing issue outside the pitch, I personally think it could be coming to an end, his Cheltenham career.
Yeah, I mean, I think his initial plan was to see out his contract. I mean, you know, he's on a fairly long contract. He's still got 2 years to go on it, practically.
I cannot see him doing 2 years.
I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. I think the one time I think he's been alright this season was Grimsby, and that was probably only because he scored.
Yeah.
If he hadn't have scored. If he hadn't have scored, I think it would have been another below par performance for a player of his standard. And I actually agree with this, if I'm honest. I actually do agree with this. I think it says a lot when I'd be more inclined to move Dawson up than I would Matty Taylor. It's a shame. You know, when I've spoken to him, he's a lovely guy, but I think this season I can't say much on him. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Okay. So we'll move swiftly onwards. Ryan Bowman. Scored 2. You know, coming to a bit of form recently, Josh.
No,
he's in his prime. He's coming back. He's the League 2 striker we've always needed.
It's that rush. He is incredibly lucky that we're making this video 2 weeks after he has scored 2 goals, because I think the first 7 or 8 games in the league, I had a look on FOTMob, and he had the most missed big chances in the entire EFL at the time. He hadn't scored a goal at that point, and every game he was just squandering big chances. For somebody who is supposed to be a big man up top, he's
not a target man at all, is he?
He is absolutely horrendous at A, flicking on the ball, B, just jumping entirely.
Jumping. I was going to say, he doesn't jump full stop.
C,
except for in the box.
D, holding up the ball, and D, I genuinely think he commits about 5 fouls on average a game. Like, he will run at somebody, he'll put them in the corner, which is really, really good, and then for some reason he'll just dive into them and give away a free kick when just trap them in the corner and press them high, but instead he just lashes out. So I was actually going to put him 1 when I saw him earlier, but just on the basis that he scored 2 goals, I don't know if you can put somebody who scored 2 goals in 1, because I think when we had Aidan Keener last season, it took him 38 goals to score a game.
Yeah. You,
Score a game, 38 games, score a goal. That's just like, yeah, but like, I think Keena was better than what Bowman's been this year, if that makes sense.
if you, for example, if you had a striker that was scoring 15 goals a season but not playing very well, you wouldn't be complaining. And,
Yeah,
you know,
so
we're early doors in the season. He hasn't played well at all, but he's scored 2. He's started to come back into the squad a bit more. I don't think he was majorly at fault for anything against Swindon. I think he, you know, when we did have chances going forward, I think he did as good as he could have. For me, it's a 2-star job.
Yeah, two star. But he's very, very lucky that we're making this video now.
Yeah, 2 weeks later than it could have been. 2 stars for his 2 goals. There we go. George Miller, another player who scored 2 goals.
I
Somehow.
like George Miller. I really I like what I've seen of him so far. He came with the reviews from Doncaster that, you know, keep him fit. He'll be a grafter. He'll be a workhorse, and if he gets the chances, he will take them. And I mean, I think that sums him up really well. I think when he has come on, he's really tried his best. He's only played short cameos. I think he started once and got taken off at the break. That game, I don't even think he was too bad in, to be honest with you. I think it was a little bit harsh that he got hooked at half time. And obviously scored against Warsaw, scored on the weekend. I don't think he can do much more. I think what he really needs is, with the upcoming, we've got a few cup games upcoming in the Papa Johns. I think he needs to be starting those, because for me, I wouldn't be too against him actually starting in the league if he just got a little bit more match fitness.
Yeah, he's one of the many players that I've mentioned previously that we needed the Reading game to not be cancelled or postponed, should I say. You know, Jordan Thomas was another one. I thought, you know, another player who needed minutes after coming back from injury. There's countless players that needed minutes to develop a bit more, develop their fitness, get back into, you know, potential contention for starting 11 in the league. Of course, that didn't happen. And now, you know, we're back into the thick of it with league action. So, you know, of course, we got a game on Saturday, game on Tuesday. And then, you know, a nice little trip to Carlisle a week on Saturday. So it's unfortunate, and I don't see him getting in the squad between now and then. We haven't seen enough of him, but when we have seen stuff, I mean, he's scoring goals, isn't he? So what are we saying?
3 stars for me, mate.
Completely agree. Now, the last man, and there's a reason I saved him till last, because it's an interesting discussion to have. Manny Norkett, of course, hadn't played any Football League football before he came in. Was sort of thrown into it a bit with a few substitute appearances. I'll let you speak first.
Yeah, so I know the first time he played for us was against Newport. Now, I was in the middle of the ocean, so I didn't watch that game, but I believe he played quite well, didn't I? I'm pretty sure I heard people say that he played quite well. And then he's been reduced to 10-minute cameos up until really Accrington, where he scored. And I thought he was really good against Accrington when he came on. I thought he changed the game and was probably the reason why we won that game. He injected a bit of pace. You know, he wasn't afraid to put himself about. He worked really hard off the ball. And I think he's somebody who's actually quite similar to George Miller in the work which he does. And I'd be interested to see those two work up top together. I think it would be like a Rob Street and George Lloyd partnership from last season, which I thought was quite good at times. But no, with Manny Norkett, I mean, he's an interesting one, because, as you said, he hasn't played any senior football. Was at United, then went to Nottingham Forest, and now this is his real first spell. He's somebody who I would definitely like to see a lot more of. And for me, I think he should be pushing the starting 11. To be honest with you.
Yeah, another player who needed, needs minutes, should I say. I have been so impressed with him in the last few games. I think he is. I mean, I said to you in the first half on Saturday, why is there only one player running off the ball every time we go forward? Now, 9 times out of 10, that was Manny Norkett. And he would get on the ball, and he would often look like he could make something happen. Now, Saturday was a poor performance from everyone, and I'm trying to dig out for positives. But if you are digging for positives, he was one, in my opinion. Accrington changed the game completely. The reason we won, if we hadn't have made that sub, potentially we might not have, you know, we might be in the relegation zone by now. You know, football's a crazy game, And it's amazing how someone who has literally had 10, 15, 20-minute cameos, we're already saying has affected games and you know, won us games. But still, based upon the amount of game time he's had, it's really hard to put your finger on a ranking for him, isn't it?
Yeah, I think from what I've seen of him, I think I would genuinely put him in 4 stars from what I've seen and what he offers. But the fact that he has played so little, I mean, he's probably played less than 2 hours of football all in all. On that, I think 3 stars would probably be fair, but I wouldn't be against 4 if you want to put him in 4.
I completely agree with you, by the way. Literally, you've if I was gonna say myself before I asked you, you've basically taken the words from my mouth. I want to put him in 4, but I think, you know, when you've seen a player play a combination across all the games of probably about 100, 120 minutes, it's a bit hard. It's a bit hard to put him up with the likes of Archer and the likes of Kinsella and Young and Bradbury and etc. So I'm gonna say 3, but he's definitely one of those that's on the cusp of 4 stars. Right then, so that does round off our rankings. However, it is time for a little revisit. Now, I've got to ask you, Josh, if you've got to move anyone, and you've decided to move anyone on second thoughts, who are you moving? Up, down, wherever? You know, who knows? Levi Lang might be going up to 5 stars. No. What are we saying?
I'm gonna move. I really want to move 3, 2. I'm going to move 2, and then I'm going to pop you a question about a player again, and then I'll let you decide where he stays. Okay, so I am moving up. Drum roll. Luke Young has been promoted to 5 stars.
What a shock. What a shock. What a shock. It's almost like we said it at the time. Brilliant.
Now, from one experienced man to another experienced man, somebody's getting relegated. And that man is Scott Bennett. He's been very, very poor. And when you mentioned Grimsby earlier, he was at fault for that Grimsby free kick. It was just naivety, and for that reason and that reason alone, he's in 1 star.
Okay.
Now, my person who I want to move down to 1 star, I made a case for him earlier. We're going to revisit him, Mr. Tom Pett. Mr. Tom Pett. If you look at all those midfielders who actually play midfield, I genuinely think he's been worse than Harrison Sona. I really, really believe he's been worse than Harrison Sona, and Harrison Sona's in 2. So I think Pett needs to go down to 1.
I hate this. Well, that concludes the video. Thanks, everyone. No, I actually hate this. I just don't think. I don't think he's been great at all by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think he's been bad enough to go to 1. I think we're the problem is his ability, and he's playing so far off his ability.
Do you know what? When we finish this recording, I'm gonna go onto FotMob and I'm gonna stat shag, and I'm gonna send you screenshots of his games and his pass accuracy, because one thing he's very good at last season was dictating the play, and this season he is horrendous, Matt. There we go. Thanks for watching, ladies and gents.
I've caved. All right. So was that all of your changes?
That's my 3 changes.
No more to go up and down, because I know there's a few that could go down.
I think that looks pretty even now. I think looking at that and where we lie in the table, I think that's pretty fair.
But yeah, that concludes the rankings. Drop a comment if you agree, disagree, or anything else. Let me know in the comments, and I'll leave a link to Josh's TikTok in the description as well. Go drop him a follow. He's massive these days. So yeah, show him some love. Right then, so that does conclude today's video. Thank you all very much for watching. If you did enjoy, smash like and subscribe. Like I said, get us to 3K. It would mean the absolute world. Thank you, Josh, for coming on. Like I say, his link will be down in the description. Go drop him a follow. All that good stuff. And Josh, have you got any words to end the video with?
We are poo water.
See you soon.